Alright, what's going on, guys? Boy TG, welcome back to another video. So in this video, we're going to look back at the Colorado Avalanche 2022 Stanley Cup Run. That's right. Today is the day that the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup on June 26, 2022. Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Avalanche and the Lightning. Avalanche win 2-1. They win the Stanley Cup. And Cale Makar, which I have on a Cale Makar shirt right now, he won the Conn Smythe Trophy that year for most valuable player in the playoffs. So, going to take a look back on the Stanley Cup run from the Colorado Avalanche. So, last year, actually, let's not start with last year. Let's start with the years before last year. So, like 2016, 2017, they finished. I don't know where they finished in the league, but I know it wasn't the top, 16 teams in the league. They finished second to last in the league in 2016-2017 season. So that wasn't their best season. It was actually their worst season. Then 2017-18, they faced the Nashville Predators. They get eliminated by them, I believe, in 6 games. And then in 2019, a second round exit to the San Jose Sharks. I forgot who they faced in the first round that year, but one of you guys can probably tell me in the comments. In 2020, of course, that was in the bubble. A second round, Game 7, overtime loss to the Dallas Stars in the bubble. And in 2021, they lose to the Vegas Golden Knights, who are the current Stanley Cup champions right now, as they beat the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Final. So those last few years before they won the Stanley Cup was rough and tough. So, hey, that rhymed. But anyway, we're going to take a look back at the Avalanche 2022 Stanley Cup run. So they finished second in the league with 56 wins, with 119 points. And they had a 56-19-7 record that year. And then they will meet a familiar foe in the playoffs, the Nashville Predators, who finished 16th in the league, which the Avalanche has swept them. So Game 1 was like a blowout win, 7-2 win in Game 1. And then Game 2, they beat the Predators in overtime, 2-1. And then Game 3, another blowout win from the Avalanche, winning 7-3. And then Game 4 was a little bit of a close one. The Predators tried to, win Game 4, force a Game 5, but they couldn't, as they lose 5-3, and they get swept in the first round by the Avalanche. And Cale Makar had an awesome goal in that first round series against the Nashville Predators. Anyway, moving on to the second round. So in the second round, they faced the St. Louis Blues, who finished 9th in the league with 109 points, 49 wins, a 49-22-11 record. And Game 1 in that series, the Avalanche will take it, 3-2 win in overtime. Game 2, St. Louis, they had an answer to that. It was going to go down 2-0 in the series, as they will win that game 4-1. And then Game 3, the Avalanche. Games 3 and 4, the Avalanche, kind of stepped up on the road right there, as they win Game 3 5-2, and then Game 4 6-3. So they took those 2 road games just like that. In Game 5, where it looked like they were about to head to the conference finals, was an OT loss to the St. Louis Blues. But Nathan MacKinnon did have a hat trick in Game 5. He would score an outstanding goal going coast to coast around the St. Louis Blues defenders. But even after that amazing goal in the playoffs that year, the Avalanche will come up short in Game 5. But Game 6 is no-brainer. Don't worry, because Darren Helm scored the game-winning goal during the final few seconds of the third period. Time was about to run out. What looked like that this game was going to go to overtime, Darren Helm stepped up for the Avalanche and scored the game-winning goal with a few seconds left on the clock in the third period. And then Avalanche beat the Blues in 6 thanks to a game-winning goal by Darren Helm. And then in the conference finals, which, to be honest, this was my favorite conference finals because you got to see Connor McDavid and the Oilers go up against Nathan MacKinnon in the Avalanche. So McDavid versus MacKinnon, that was my favorite series from that run from the Avalanche. Game 1 was a close game as the Avalanche won that game 8-6. So it was a high-scoring game. A lot of goals were scored. 14 total goals were scored in total. So it was a close game between the Oilers and the Avalanche in Game 1 of that series. And in Game 2, Avalanche weren't going to make this a close game as they get a shutout win in Game 2, winning 4-0 in Game 2. Then Game 3 in Edmonton, Avalanche took that game 4-2. And I forgot the person who scored the game-winning goal in that game. I think it was Tyson Jones. I don't know who. I forgot the person who scored the game-winning goal in that game. But you guys can, tell me in the comments. And then Game 4, another close game between the Avalanche and the Oilers. But it will be the Avalanche coming up on top, of course, as Arturi Lehkonen scores the game-winning goal in overtime to send the Avalanche to the Stanley Cup Final. And before he did that with the Avalanche, he did that in 2021 with the Montreal Canadiens when he scored the game-winning goal against the Vegas Golden Knights to send the Habs to the Stanley Cup Final that year, making their first Stanley Cup Final appearance since 1993, which was the last year that they won the Stanley Cup. But anyway, back to the Avalanche's run. But the Oilers finished in the league that year. They finished 11th in the league. Still ended up getting swept. They had 49 wins of the year with 104 points. 49-27-6 record from the Edmonton Oilers. So, yeah. Anyway, Stanley Cup Final. So we got the Colorado Avalanche taking on the back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning, who looked like they were going to win 3 straight Stanley Cups that year because they won in 2020 in the bubble against the Dallas Stars, and then they won in 2021 against the Montreal Canadiens, and they looked to win 3 Stanley Cups, but it had to start with Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, which the Avalanche took that game 4-3 in overtime. Andre Burakovsky with the game-winning goal in that game. And in Game 2, Avalanche shut out the Lightning 7-0. So, tough one for the Lightning Games 1 and 2. Game 3, they had a blowout win against the Avalanche. They will win that game 6-2. And in Game 4, Avalanche had an answer right back as Nazem Kadri scored the overtime game-winning goal. In that game, people were like, did this go in? Did this go in? I was unsure that it went in because he was coming down that right side and he went top shelf on Vasi. And it looked like some people thought it didn't go in, but but when I first saw it, when I first watched that game, it looked like it had went in after I saw the replay a couple of times. So the puck went past Andre Vasilevsky. And the Avalanche will take a 3-1 series lead, so 3-1. With 1 win away from winning the Stanley Cup, and they will have to get it done in Game 5, which they did not. They actually lost 3-2 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Andre Palat with the game-winning goal in that game, which he and the Lightning forced the Game 6 back in Tampa. And we're looking to force a Game 7 to keep their 3-peat Stanley Cup hopes alive. So Game 6, June 26, 2022. Final game, Avalanche could win the Stanley Cup, or the Lightning could force a Game 7 back in Colorado. So, first period, Steven Stamkos, team captain, he needed to step up for the Lightning. That's what team captains are for. Your star player, your team captain steps up when you need them the most. So he had the first goal in that game in the first period. And then second period, another superstar player, not from the Lightning, but from the Avalanche, Nathan MacKinnon ties the game up at 1. And then also in the second period, Arturi Lehkonen, who has scored the game-winning goal, who recently scored the game-winning goal in the conference finals against Edmonton that year, made it 2-1. So that would be 2 game-winning goals by Arturi Lehkonen in that year playoffs. So he made it 2-1. And, of course, no goals were scored in the third. Of course, the Avalanche had a chance to hit an empty netter. They didn't. But it didn't matter because they won the Stanley Cup that year in 2022. So they ruined the Lightning's chance of three-peating this year. But it was a good run from the Avalanche. If you ask me which run was better between the Avalanche's run and the Golden Knights' run, it was the Avalanche's run because it was more enjoyable, and they haven't won their first Stanley Cup in almost 2 decades. Whereas the Golden Knights run, it was good, but they won their first Stanley Cup. They weren't around that much like the Avalanche were. Well, first it was Quebec Nordiques. Then it was later called the Colorado Avalanche. But anyway, I enjoyed that run. It was better than the Golden Knights Stanley Cup run, which I know Golden Knights fans who are watching this video probably won't like that. So, but I'm just being honest here, guys. But the Lightning finished in the league that year with 50. They finished 8th in the league. They had 51 wins, 51-23-8 record with 110 points. So, but they couldn't get it done against the Avalanche that year. Cale Makar will end up winning the Conn Smythe Trophy that year. He had 29 points in 20 games, 8 goals, 21 assists with 29 points. So congrats to Cale Makar. I always say he's the Connor McDavid of defense. But I know some people would probably disagree. Some people probably agree with me. But he is your Conn Smythe Trophy winner for the 2021-2022 playoffs for the Stanley Cup run. But got to give it to the Lightning. Even though that they didn't win their third straight Stanley Cup, they had a heck of a run, beating the Maple Leafs in 7, sweeping the Panthers, beating the Rangers in 6, and of course coming up short to the Colorado Avalanche. It looked like, but at least they made the Stanley Cup final for their third straight year that year, despite not winning a Stanley Cup. But the Avalanche had a heck of a run. I know all you Avs fans were happy because, like I said, you won your first Stanley Cup for the first time in almost 2 decades, and for the first time since 2001. So, which was an emotional year for you Avs fans, because Ray Bourque got his first Stanley Cup, and that was my favorite moment of that year when the Avs won it. Joe Sakic handing the cup off to Ray Bourque. That was just a forever hockey moment, and a moment that he'll remember forever. Joe Sakic was actually the GM of the Colorado Avalanche that year. So he won 2 Stanley Cups as a player, and he won 1 as a GM. Those 2 Stanley Cups as a player were, of course, in 1996 and 2001, and he was the team captain of the Avalanche. And then 1 as a GM, so he gets 3 Stanley Cups. I think Mario Lemieux, he won 2 Stanley Cups as a player, and of course 3 as a GM, because I think when the Penguins won in 2009, 2016, and 2017, he was the GM that year, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video, guys. So, just a little recap of the Avalanche's Stanley Cup run. They had a heck of a run. Heck of a series in the Stanley Cup final between the Lightning and the Avalanche. It was a good one. I really enjoyed it. And I know you Avs fans enjoyed it. But anyway, hit it with a like. If you enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. Hit it with the subscribe button. I will see you guys next time.